Something that all NBA fans can agree on is the fact that there's absolutely nothing like the All Stars. The dunk contest, the skills challenge, and the 3-point shootout, plus a game where all the best players in the league go head to head, that's pretty much all the person can ask for. But it's not like we're the only ones that benefit from this. Even the players themselves usually want to be a part of the All Star games because it's a title which goes to show how good you are. You think people would look the same way at LeBron if he wasn't a 17-time All Star? Probably not. So, with all this in mind, why are most NBA players against playing in the All Star game? If you didn't know, a handful of players have already shared what they think in interviews, like Darren Fox calling the All Star game stupid with all the COVID protocols, and LeBron saying that players need a break. Well, there's quite a lot of reasons for it, with the first and probably biggest problem being COVID 19. Let's say that 50 players go to Atlanta for All Star weekend, and those 50 players are from 20 different teams. If one person out of those guys ends up having COVID and plays with the rest of the players without knowing that he is infected, that could pretty much shut down the whole league for a good chunk of time. How? Well, after taking part in the All Star game, those 50 players who are now infected are going to go back to their own teams and come in contact with their teammates, which would then make 20 different teams infected. I know what I'm saying is pretty much a worst case scenario, and the chances of that happening is not that high. What I'm actually trying to say is that there's going to be a risk, and a lot of NBA players find that risk to be unnecessary to take. But here's the funny part, the players who make it to the All-Stars aren't the ones that are most likely to cause a problem. The NBA has a ton of rules and regulations that make sure that players are safe when they're playing. But what's going to happen to the players who don't make it? They're going to have a full week off, while being allowed to go wherever they want. They can come in contact with hundreds of people who could also be infected, and then come back into the league and give it to everyone else. Thinking about it, those players are probably more of a threat than the ones who are in All Stars because of the fact that there's more than 200 of them. Another thing that's making the players not want to play in the All Star game is their families. Unlike other seasons, most NBA players aren't able to see or spend time with their families regularly because of COVID precautions. And one of the only opportunities players had for this is the 1 week break they get in February, also known as All Star Week. So when the NBA suddenly tells them that they have to stay and play during that time, there were for sure going to be negative reactions. Imagine it's Christmas and you plan to spend the whole night with your family and friends, eating traditional food and maybe even watching Home Alone for the 8th time. But then out of nowhere, your boss calls and tells you that you have to come and work all night. Here's where it gets different for you and NBA players though. You have the option to tell your boss that you can't, and they're most likely going to respect what you said. You might get fired, but whatever. Well, NBA players don't exactly have the option for that. Apparently, if you're selected as an All-Star, you have to play in the game or otherwise you'll find a huge amount of money. The only way you could get out of the game is if you're injured. Seems unfair, right? Having to choose between your family or paying a huge fee would make any NBA player hate to play in this year's All-Star game. What about for the players who haven't yet started a family? Well, what those players are saying is that this year's offseason was extremely short and they didn't really have the chance to let their body rest and recover so that they can be ready for the new year. Having that little 1 week break in the middle of the season lets players get a little time off to get their energy back so they have the ability to play at the same level as right now. And it also lowers the chance of injury, which is another win. The last thing which I personally came up with was the location of the All-Star game. Well, the game is going to take place in Atlanta, which is one of those places where there isn't that many things being done when it comes to COVID 19. The restrictions and efforts there are super minimal, and that makes it a really bad place for these players to be at. They allow a high number of fans into the stadiums there, which makes the amount of contact happening between players and fans uncountable. And then there's the city itself, where the players will be staying. I'm pretty sure that unlike the bubble, players are allowed to leave their hotels in Atlanta, and with everywhere being open, who knows where these players will go. I know it might seem like having the game is a bad idea from every aspect you look at it, but there are also some benefits which can come along with having the All-Stars. For one, some of the younger NBA players get to experience their first All-Star game appearance because of how well they played this season, and they might not have the same opportunity in the coming seasons. Although missing an All-Star game might not be something big for players like LeBron and Kevin Durant, it might be something really irreplaceable for others. Also looking at it through a fan standpoint, who wouldn't want to see an All-Star game? Personally, last year's game was one of the best ones I've ever seen, and I was looking forward to this year's, and I'm sure thousands of other people have the same feeling. Also, let's not forget about the amount of revenue that this will bring the league. but that's not really something that would affect me and you. Well, that's pretty much it. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, and if you got a minute, check out one of the videos on the screen right now, which I'm sure you'll like. I'll see you in the next video.